Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Elisa. I'm the event coordinator for Changing Hands Bookstore, and on behalf of Changing Hands and our event co-host, Peregrine Book Company in Prescott, I want to thank you for joining us today for our virtual book talk. We appreciate your continuing support during these times of social distancing. We may not be able to host audiences in our stores, but we are still hard at work booking authors for virtual events like this one. For those of you who purchased Leonora in the Morning Light, this beauty, as part of your ticket, your book is ready for pickup. Today was release day, so swing on by either Changing Hands or Peregrine to pick up your book. If you have not purchased your book yet, I will be putting in the chat function links to purchase from both Changing Hands and from Peregrine. Tonight's event is scheduled to run from 6 to 7. When you first log on, your video and audio will be disabled. You can see and hear us, but we cannot see or hear you. We will have a question and answer session towards the end of the event. Please use the chat function to ask your questions, and our lovely moderator will be pulling from that chat to throw your questions to our author this evening. If you are having trouble hearing or seeing us, use the chat function to communicate privately with me, and I will do my best to help troubleshoot. I do want to let everyone know, speaking of tech issues, our lovely moderator, Wendy, is joining us from a hotel room. She's traveling, so yay, that's the good news. Travel is happening. But the hotel room connection is a little meh. The good news is her audio is perfect. We haven't had any audio glitches, but her video may freeze up just a little bit, but her audio is right in sync with what we're doing. So we're hoping that it'll be a minimal distraction for what we're gonna do here tonight. Let's get started. Our moderator this evening is Wendi Norris, who, after spending a decade working in Fortune 500 and startup technology companies, started Gallery Wendi Norris San Francisco in 2011. She is currently on the board of the Art Dealers Association of America and has twice been named one of the most influential women in Bay Area business by the San Francisco Business Times. Ms. Norris worked directly with Leonora Carrington during the last decade of her life, and her gallery has been the primary global representative of Ms. Carrington's art since her death in 2011. Tonight's author, Michaela Carter, is a writer, painter, and award-winning poet. Her novel, Further Out Than You Thought, was an Indie Next pick, an Arizona Republic Recommends, and Arizona Central's Best Critics Pick for 2014. Her poetry won the Poetry Society of America Los Angeles New Poets Prize, has been nominated for Pushcart Prizes, and has appeared in numerous anthologies and journals. She is also the co-founder of the lovely Peregrine Book Company in Prescott, Arizona, where she works as a buyer. I am delighted to host the debut event for Ms. Carter's new book. Leonora in the Morning Light. I finished it last night. Guys, looks like we're having some more tech difficulties. Yay, tech! Let's see. Okay, I'm back. That's good. Michaela and Wendy, if you want to start your, yay, there's Wendy. All right, got Wendy. Let's see if we can get Michaela back in the room. And then we're off to the races. Yay. All right, ladies, good event.
Thank you so much, Elise.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I know, Michaela, if you don't mind, I'm just going to start because I want to really congratulate you on such an incredible achievement and a remarkable book. I can't wait to dive into our discussion tonight. And before we do that, I know it's such a big celebratory day for you, but as many people may know, it's also Leonora Carrington's birthday. So it's a perfectly timed release today. I know Michaela and I wanted to just raise a glass. I want to raise one to you, Michaela. I'm hoping we can raise one together to Leonora and just toast to what would have been her 104th birthday today. I'm drinking tequila in her honor.
Cheers.
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 Salud.
Leonora. Salute. I'm drinking tequila too.
I hope some of the folks in the virtual community are joining us this evening in that toast.
Me too.
I apologize. Hopefully you all can hear me clearly. I think Michaela and I are going to dive right in, and we'll talk a little bit about Leonora and some of her biographical elements as we go. But I've been so taken by this book. I thought we could start, Michaela, with you doing a reading just so we can level set and get everybody to hear your voice and what this book is like.
Well, thank you so much. I would love to read just a small section from it's Leonora's second chapter. So the book is actually in 3 different voices. It's Leonora and Max Ernst and Peggy Guggenheim. And this is from June 1937 in London. And she just met Max the night before, and there were sparks. And she kind of fell in love, but she'd actually kind of fallen for him because of the painting she saw of his from the year before. 2 children are threatened by a nightingale, but then he did not disappoint. So yeah, we'll just start at the beginning. Leonora opened the door in her nightdress and ran a hand through her tangled hair. It was morning, and here on the doorstep of her basement flat stood a man in a black hat, his suit pressed and spotless. He bowed slightly before handing her a small envelope. She knew who it was without even having to ask. Max. She tore the envelope open and read the note straight away as if it might evaporate in her hands. Come away with me, will you, for a picnic in the woods? If you agree, I will fetch you at 2 this afternoon. Before she could talk herself out of it, he was married after all and twice her age. She sent the messenger back with a folded note, which said simply, yes. It was utterly crazy, she knew, to be alone with him in the woods. Anything might happen. She hardly knew him, and yet it was this wildness, this unpredictability that attracted her to him. It was fanciful and romantic. No Brit would risk so bold a proposition. Certainly not if he knew who her father was. Of course she would go. She checked the clock, 10 till 2. In her dark apartment, the air smelled of cigarette ash and boiled eggs. She sat hunched over her kitchen table, and by the light of the bare bulb, she worked on her series of sketches. Women without smiles, without breasts, women with their hair short, capped in berets, cigarettes hanging from their lips. All spring she'd kept at them, not at Ozenfont's art school, where she drew apple after apple in an attempt to render the fruit in a single flawless line. But here on her own, she spread the drawings on the table and squinted as if by softening the edges of the paper, she could see these women as friends, part of a single scene. Maybe they were lunching together, not planning whom and when they would marry or what pattern of china they would choose, like the debutantes she'd known, but rather what they would paint, what they would photograph, and how the world would see them as artists and buy their work. Their art would hang in galleries, museums. They weren't sure how they'd get there, but they sure as hell weren't going to settle for the lives their mothers led. It was a group she yearned to join. If she listened hard, she could hear them talking. Glimmer, one said, but keep the mystery. Put the receiver back on its holster, said another. Listen to your heart, your blood. One woman began smoking a cigarillo, and she crushed the coal of it in the wood, leaving a burn on the table, a dark eye. Leonora squinted more, then let her eyes blur so the world around the women could come into focus. If she could see their world, she could enter it, leaving her own burn mark on the wood. So that's it for that little part.
So incredible. So many questions I want to ask. And I was thinking as you were reading that about her, I spoke with her longtime publisher, Paul DeAngelis, about his reading of this book, your book, and my interpretation. And the thing that we both said almost simultaneously was, wow, she really nailed her. And I mean, I knew her for 10 years of her last 10 years of her life. And I was thinking, how does one, do that? So I have spent the better part of my last 2 decades as a gallerist, representing her artwork, really trying to forget about her life. Because my job as a gallerist, as you know, is to talk about the work and not let her compelling, captivating life take over the work. And I've learned that from various curators. You really need to focus on her work. But then when we started, it was like she came back to life. So which I loved. So I'm wondering for you, you started by studying the Surrealists 7 years ago or more or less. Mm-hmm. Why choose Leonora Carrington? What was it about her life that was different from, I don't know, a Leonora Feeney? Why Leonora?
Well, I actually, when I started researching the Surrealists, I was just kind of like, man, they're all men, right? It's this, it's all male. And so I was really, I went to Europe trying to discover who the women were too. And then I saw, at the Tate Modern, I saw Leonora's, one of her works of art, it was in that Surrealist section that they have. And I was just stunned by it. It kind of stopped me. And I felt like, whoa, how have I not heard of this woman? And then in the gift shop time, my husband actually found the Susan Aberth's book on her and her art and her life. And I just, stole it from him right away. And so reading about her life, because I started kind of actually writing about a protagonist who was totally fictional, that I had been kind of conjuring up, and I knew that I wanted that idea of the muse to be turned on its head, to really to do away with that whole muse thing, and her life with Max, and then they're being separated, and everything she went through. I felt like it was really basically like an individuation process where she is her male side and her female side are all together in her art and being, and it's I'm probably getting ahead into the book too much, but I don't know. But she absolutely captivated me. And then that her, and then really as I knew more and more about her, it's like, oh my God, how is she like, over 2,000 works of art, and whoa. And then how can I like think that I can know what she was thinking? Because all that is of course made up, right? I mean, intuited, I hope, but it means so much to me that she struck you in the book as being maybe true to her character that you knew, even though that was what, 60 years before you knew her. This is about when she's like 20 to 26.
Right.
Yeah. So that's amazing.
Yeah. I think, you describe a little bit about her mannerisms in that passage that you just read. And those really struck me, like her physical characteristics, her hair, very polished but disheveled at the same time in some ways, and always thinking and always reading like a room in an amazing way. For me, one of the things I find interesting for you, like that why you chose to write a historical, like fiction versus like historical biography, because I think she was also, Leonora Carrington, in addition to making the 2,000 paintings and works of art that you described, I mean, she had an amazing and very important career that people are just starting to learn about, in many ways. But she was also this incredible writer, and her short stories have been recently republished, her book of tarot. So I mean, I'm wondering why you chose fiction. I have some thoughts, but I'm curious because there's a relationship Leonora has with fiction, and then because fiction is really interesting. It reminds me of a painting, so I'm curious how you think about that.
I love reading nonfiction, but I'm really drawn to fiction because I love being inside people, like feeling kind of like I don't know, it's almost like you feel like you're acting something out. So you're in a scene and like, okay, who are they, and what are they feeling, and what are the sensory things, and then what kind of ideas are maybe percolating, what do they want, like all those things. I guess I started out acting too, and so I do find that weirdly kind of helps with writing fiction. And also I really wanted to know what made her kind of tick, like what, who was she, kind of like from the inside out. And that was, It was really an amazing experience to spend that many years kind of going slowly through this story and finding kind of like, what was she even dreaming about? Like what were those kind of unconscious elements that made its way into her art? And yeah. And
So,
especially, go ahead.
I think throughout your book, you do tap into her subconscious a lot. And it almost as if you are getting to her truth through fiction more than you might have had you tried to get it factually accurate. Is that fair to say? Or I'm just...
Leonora, speak. I hope so. I hope I did. I mean, I did really feel like I got to know her, and then there were the clues in her paintings. Like I went to the Met and saw her self-portrait, and it struck me. I think I have it on a screen share. I could try. I wonder if it would work if I do it. No, okay, it's okay. Anyway, this painting struck me so much because, I mean, I'd seen it in books, but you can't look at a painting in a book and really know it. But it's, you know, the hyena, and then Leonora's in this chair, and her hair is kind of wild, and there's the horse out the window, and the rocking horse, and the hyena at her fingers. But really what I noticed finally seeing the actual painting was that blur on the floor where she wiped something out. And then just knowing her from later in her life, like there are paintings where she seems just so sure and so, you know, quick to do everything she did, because it seemed like she was so immersed in these worlds that she was painting. And but what did she wipe out? First of all, why did she wipe it out? So it became kind of this mystery that percolated as I was writing it. And that was where I was kind of like, oh, wow, she really needed, I felt like she needed Max's approval at that age when she was, you know, 20 and he was 46 and he was the established artist. And maybe she wasn't as sure of herself then as she became. And yeah, it was really an amazing experience to get to kind of work through that.
Yeah, I mean, for those of members, I mean, I know we have a bunch of people tuning in this evening, and this is going to be recorded and whatnot, but about Leonora Carrington, you don't really have to read your book, but I do think it's really interesting in that it does feel like a coming of age in a sense. I mean, it's 6 years of her life, the first 6 years of her artistic production, really, and she's rebelling against her father, meets this man, falls in love. And then, you know, I won't ruin the ending, I mean, but it is a coming of age story in a way. She's early 20s, but still, right?
I think it's definitely coming of age, right? Yeah, I mean, it's like her becoming, I felt like it was kind of going from like apprentice to master, basically. Like some of her paintings that she painted, I think pretty soon after she got to Mexico were, right, some of her, they're just stunning. I mean, I wouldn't dare to say what's her best or this best or that, but like the giantess or the house opposite, these paintings are just so incredible. I loved getting to see them in Mexico City too, with Terry Ark's exhibit there. But that she seemed so sure then.
Yeah.
And what a journey.
I want to come back and talk about the paintings because it was like a aha moment for me. But one of the things that strikes me as well is you mentioned this is like a love story, as a love story. But, you know, this theme, and by the way, everyone, I'm not a literary expert. I do read a lot, but this is my first like literary talk. But this theme of this border between like reason and love, and you have these three powerful characters, you know, Max, who for my money is one of the best artists of the 20th century, along with Peggy Guggenheim, this renowned heiress and an incredible collector who like you, I've read everything about Peggy Guggenheim I could get my hands on. And then you have Leonora Carrington, and in your book, she's a young debutante. She's a muse. She's this fierce artist who's just in the middle of war-torn Europe and blossoming with each page. As I turn the page, she's like growing into her own. So, you know, I guess what is this border that you're like, all the characters are, you know, Peggy, is she like, is she full of reason and is she sane, or is Max losing it? You know, it's like they all teeter back and forth between reason and love. It's super interesting. I mean, we all do in some ways, I'm imagining.
I love that you found that. Yeah, that like the border between reason and love. That's I know like exactly that passage that kind of says that, which is Peggy's, but I felt like Peggy was so much like lovelorn, lovesick kind of poor Peggy, you know, here are these like young, beautiful, all of the femme enfants or the different kind of muse names that Andre Breton gave them, right? And all the male artists just so fawn over them and love them. And then here she is, and gosh, she just wants Max to paint a picture of her, you know, like, and he just keeps painting Leonora. But, you know, but I loved that love triangle. I felt like that was really fun to write about. And it was funny when I was researching it, I thought, oh gosh, okay, so Peggy comes in here, and this kind of, you know, because when you're writing like real historical fiction or historical fiction based on real characters, that follows their lives, I really tried to follow it historically accurately. So you can't really change what happened in that kind of a story. But as I got toward, you know, the second half of the book where Peggy comes in, I was like, oh, thank God. I was so, like, I so welcomed her voice, because she was this kind of like reason too. She was like the reasonable one that I, like most maybe normal-ish people could relate to, I thought. And it was fun to see Max and Leonora through her eyes too. Yeah, and to kind of be on the outside of those surrealists.
So to me, it's interesting. It's a love triangle, but for those of you who don't know this, Peggy Guggenheim was the first person who ever acquired a Leonora Carrington painting. And I don't know that you talk about that specifically.
I do, actually.
The aha, yeah, the early on.
Yeah, like when she first meets her, yeah, she's buying it. I think Max won't let her have Bride of the Wind, his one that she likes in his studio. And then Leonora has Lord Candlestick's horses there or something. And Peggy buys it. Yeah, I love that. And Peggy supported the women, like loved the women too, like with the 31 Women show at the end. You know, she was amazing. She brought modern art to America, I think.
She did. I mean, she was she's a collector I revere to this day for the way she involved herself in the artists' lives, and there was a moment in a book where it really struck me. They're in Marseille, which at the time in Marseille, a lot of artists and people who were on, you know, the Nazis' hit list were escaping to the US and to North America, I should say, via Marseille. So they're in Marseille, and Ernst is with another artist who we both love, Leonora Fini, and in this cafe, and you picture it so beautifully in this cafe. But what happens in this passage that really opens the book up for me in some ways is they unroll these canvases and describe one of I think Fini's most incredible artworks, and the Shepherdess of the Sphinxes, I think. And yeah, which is based on Leonora and Leonora Fini and Leonora Carrington's really close friendship, which is well documented. And so for me, I realized these artworks are like a passport. They are a currency. There's something that these artifacts place to the next. And there was something very contemporary for me about that. An artist today, maybe migrating across borders. What do we bring with us? Are we bringing jewelry, family rugs, or heirlooms, or artworks? But there are moments throughout your book where the artwork is invaluable. It helps them survive, this tragedy that they're all facing. That is World War II, ghost trains, getting from one border to the next. So
Yeah,
were you cognizant when you were writing about the artworks, the power of them?
They did. They felt like they had their own characters, kind of. Like, I was about to say talismans, but they were because kind of magical. But also, like, when Max is leaving their home that they had in Ardèche in the south of France and fleeing, trying to not get caught by the Nazis, but he packs his pack with, unstretches all the canvases and has them, and they save him, basically, really. I think there's somewhere in there that I say it's like his art, on the one hand, he wouldn't have been considered degenerate by the Nazis and Hitler, maybe, if he hadn't been an artist. But his art also in the book, saves him and does get him across borders. And then to see where those paintings end up, and they really do have lives of their own painting, they're still around. It was really such a discovery for me to write about that, because kind of as I was writing it too, I would think, okay, there's got to be a painting here that would kind of be important right now in their lives. And sometimes I would kind of go like, oh, this one, but then I'd later read something that said, yes, that was the painting he gave her their first Christmas, or this or that, and I was, whoa, okay, where did that come from? I don't know. It's being so immersed in it. It's hard to say where everything came from, but then, of course, I always checked it and double checked it to be sure it was the right thing. But it is so fascinating how they are like a currency. I love that, Wendi.
Well, I think of artists working today, like there's an artist in Iraq that I like, and one from Syria that I really like, and that's the only things that they escape with is their own canvases. So I mean, when I'm holding one of these works, like Down Below, which you talk about to some degree in your book, which she made when she was in the Spanish asylum, when they thought she was insane at some point. And that, work, I think about the materials are different because her mother sent her those materials from the UK, from Lancashire. And so that's what she had to work with, right? So you think about sometimes the time and place and the situation in which these works were made, and their own, if they could tell their own stories, what those stories would be like, right? There's some questions coming in. I was gonna start one now. Okay. And then I'm just, if anybody has questions, send them through the Q&A or the chat function, I should say, and I'll pick them up. But I just thought this would be good to get out of the way right away. Laura is asking, how did you come up with the title, Michaela?
Oh, well, Leonora in the Morning Light is a painting that Max painted of her really right before the Nazis invaded. And it's a beautiful painting with jungle kind of scene. And then, but there's this darkness hidden in there, these like the skeleton and some other kind of frightening elements. But then she ends up in Mexico. So it just seemed so perfect that here it was like almost prophetic or something, that painting, I felt like. And then also all of this, there's sections in the book that are each titles of paintings. And that title is the last section too.
One of our, Anna Sussman just placed a link of it in the chat for anybody who wants to go to see a picture of it. Thank you, Anna, for that.
Oh, great.
Awesome.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. It's funny. I'll tell you a story. So I started visiting Leonora maybe in 2002 when I first met her. Am I getting that right? No, 2004. And she had that painting. And for a long time, she had that painting locked. She would wear a necklace, something like what I would have, that had keys on it. And she had it behind a locked door in her house in Mexico City in La Roma. And it was very funny. Like if you got let into her secret room where that painting was installed, you had to have done something right on that given day. So
I would have loved to have been able to go in that room. Wow.
One other thing I'll say is people may know this, but she was an artist who was incredibly prolific, but never wanted to talk about her artwork. And she just didn't like it. And in the time I spent around her, she also never wanted to talk about Max Ernst. So Max Ernst was forbidden, and talking about her paintings in front of other people was also something she didn't do, at least for that whatever decade that I knew her. Those were two things she wouldn't do. I find interesting, in your book.
I love that.
Yeah, I really love your process. And I think it's interesting how your process took around 6 years and change or something. And you're covering a similar amount of time in her life, about 6 years. So I'm wondering if you might share for those writers in the crowd, and because I do think it's really important how you built this story.
Sure. I did a lot of research. I read a lot of books because all of the artists and like people they were around wrote autobiographies. Peggy and Leonora has down below. But Max even has this strange autobiography kind of in which he refers to himself in the third person. I don't know if you've read any of those, Wendi, but he, his son too wrote a book about his father. And so all these books, I just kind of soaked it up. And then it was really like I heard a first sentence, even though of course it wasn't the actual first sentence, but I was like, okay, I'm going to write it down. It was something about the light in Ardèche or the south of France, and like, because he's coming back there after being away and just like wanting to paint that light. But it really, I would read like late at night before I'd go to bed too. And I'd kind of write down some lines or things that would come. And then I'd get up and work in an almost stream of conscious way in a journal, like writing by hand. I think for a whole summer, I just wrote different scenes by hand, and then transferred it. And then, and then it went through all the different drafts, really getting to that, like Max's time in the camp, in the internment camp for Germans, and the ghost train, because he did not write about that at all. He made it sound like they were on a passenger train, basically. And then I read Leon Furtwängler has a book that he details the whole thing. He was a German writer who was there too. And so I really got like a full idea of how awful that was, to be in custody, and especially for Max, who was such an individualist and so valued his freedom above all else. And so it just, yeah, it went through so many drafts, and yeah, but it did start in that kind of like half space between dream and reality.
So there's a bunch of questions coming in, Michaela. I'm going to try to get to some of them. One came in from California. It says, was there a discovery, I'm going to ask this first, that stood out during your research? You talked a little bit about that, but would you say that those were the discoveries, or was there something else that you uncovered that was a pivotal moment for you?
Mm-hmm. That was a really big one, because so much of Leonora's, I feel like her relationship with Max was in some ways needing that like approval so she could know maybe her worth too, or she was so much in this wonderful scene also, but you know how you can kind of like lose yourself in a scene too. So her inner struggle, that was a big discovery. But also, what other aha moments? There were so many, because I didn't, know the whole thing until I kind of got to the end. So it was perfect that Peggy has this show of 31 women, which it just, because kind of at the end of a book, of a novel, you kind of want everything to come back in, right? You want like a feeling of completeness, and that was just such a gift. And then at that show, there was the Frida Kahlo painting that she cut off her hair. And it was when she was separated from Diego. And so it was a moment that I could have Leonora looking at Frida Kahlo's painting. And it was just, I have chills right now. I was like, thank you. It was just so many beautiful ways that the book came together. It felt like gifts.
I love that scene too, because, it's giving you a glimpse of where Max goes next, because as you described it so accurately, I believe, he had his hand around Dorothea Tanning's waist while that was going on, and that becomes the woman he spends the rest of his life with. Okay, lots of questions. They're all super good. I'm in no particular order, but someone asks a question that I feel like we should disclose. Someone says, Wendi and Michaela, you guys seem to have a friendship and a literary connection. How long have you known each other or worked together?
Oh,
we've never really, we've worked together. I guess one could call it that.
Yeah,
but
a little bit.
When you started your research, we met, and yeah.
It was somewhere in the middle there. I think I had some, the book was, it felt almost done for so long. And then I, of course, kept, going back and working on it. But I think maybe 5 years ago, something like that. I don't know, 4? I'm not sure. Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. But I think you're awesome, Wendi.
right back at you. I'll tell the stories about you later, because I have so many questions. One question for you, Michaela, is could you elaborate a bit, this is from Timothy, could you elaborate a bit on the extent to which Leonora's own voice in her plays and short stories influenced yours? And how would you describe Leonora's voice? Like, what stands out for you as a writer? I think it's
my gosh. Yeah.
Probably
the element of surprise a lot in her things for me. maybe not so much with the hearing trumpet, but her short stories. There's the strangeness and surprise in there, and the like. I love her work so much. Her writing as much as her painting too. I don't think I couldn't be maybe as surrealist as that. I think I try and maybe have people understand the whole story in the way that hopefully they do as it is written. But I did, especially because there is that section called Fear where she is in Santander. And that the only source that I had for that was Down Under. And anyone who reads this book, I hope you will pick up and read Down Under, because that really takes you deep on a journey, down, 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 and into yourself. But also there's just so many elements that I had to simplify a bit. Yeah. But I hope that her spirit comes through.
Yeah. I thought it was a smart choice, if I may say, that you touch on down below her, autobiographical account of her being treated with these electroshock therapies and cardiazol, and when she was declared at that time as insane, which subsequent we know that she wasn't, but you don't go into it. You let her story stand for what it is, her own. Like, you're not trying to reinterpret her story, but you touched on it in such a way that must have been a really interesting challenge for you as you approached that section, I was thinking.
It really was. I think it expanded to about 100 pages or more as I wrote it, and then I went back and just excised and really simplified, because I think in the final version it's maybe 15 pages or something like that. And then I also put it in the third person, not Leonora, but she's, I think, the girl or something like that. And that kind of helped to distance it. And also, I guess with that, there were kind of her hallucinations throughout the book that needed to lead up to it too. So that was another of those kind of discoveries. She really, her paintings were transportive, and then really working kind of in a more tangible way with with her affection for them, and her love for them. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the she and what they are? Because they're threaded throughout, and they're threaded throughout her paintings. It was just, I think you should.
Sure. Yeah. So, right, because Leonora was of Irish descent, right? Even though she was raised in Lancashire and England, but she so connected with her Irish roots, and the she are the little people, or the wee folk, right? The old people, or mythical beings that went underground when the white man came to Ireland, right? I mean, they were the early mythical folk. I just love her paintings of them. I love that one of the she at the table and those orbs.
And they're usually depicted in these white, almost ghost-like kind of figures, often diminutive, almost like little fairies in a way, right?
Yeah.
Several questions relate to a similar theme, and I hope I'm not glitching too much as I'm asking this, but one came in from Emily from Germany, and one from Anna, who I believe is in New York. She's a writer as well, so her questions are really serious too. But it's really along the themes of, you know, how are you toggling between adhering to these characters' versions or interpretations of events and narrating them from your own perspective. And I think Emily's question was like, were you talking to family members, like, you know, like almost like primary research to people who knew her, and how true are you being in this novel? And I think that's several people have asked that similar question.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I didn't really know primary research in terms of like looking at papers in libraries or talking to family. Even there was so much already out there that's been published, that and I wanted it to be something that kind of arose organically, that I discovered almost as you would like writing pure fiction that maybe isn't based on real people, because you can hear about people, or even what they write about themselves isn't necessarily what you might find by diving into them as characters. So I was really trying to know them as characters, and there was so much out there already that I couldn't use all the great things. Like there were so many just wonderful kind of surrealist moments that I couldn't find the right place for in the book. You know, yeah. There's like where Max and Leonora dye their hair purple, I think, was when friends were visiting them in Ardèche, and she does this like crazy cockroach dance on the table after he pulls these like her intestines from her, you know, and it's like, oh man, just, yeah, I would have loved to have hung out with them.
Yeah. You would have fit right in.
Thank you. The weirdo I am.
No, I mean that with lots of respect.
Thank you.
Susan writes in and she's saying she loves the work that you're doing here, and on the legacy, especially of this great female artist. She wants to know who's favorite. It's a great question.
Okay. You just glitched out. Which favorite painting or?
Women authors.
Oh, favorite women authors. Okay. Okay. Oh my gosh, that is a good question. Oh, okay. Well, my favorite poet, women author, well, my favorite poet, hands down, woman or man, is Elizabeth Bishop. And yeah, my favorite novelists, God, there's so many good ones. But I mean, God, I love Margaret Atwood. I love Isabel Allende. I'm trying to think of everyone. Yeah. Yeah, I mostly read women too. So. And Leonora, I love her work.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I have maybe one question, and if there's anything you want to say before I'm trying to wrap this at 7, as I was asked to do so tightly, but I'm sorry if I don't get to everyone's questions, but
Virginia Woolf.
This is a nice one.
I had to say Virginia Woolf. I was like, totally. Okay, Virginia Woolf. There, I said it. Okay. Go ahead.
Somebody also posted a book about studying with Miss Bishop in the chat, which is awesome. So it's kind of great. So if you could ask Leonora a question, if she were still alive today in 104, drinking with us, what would that question be? That's something coming in from. I'm elaborating a little bit, but that's basically the question.
Oh my God,
would you
what a
ask her?
great question. Leonora, what would I ask you? Wow. Um, oh, like, I just so wonder, even like, where is she now? Like, where are you now? What is it like? Because I feel like so much she was so afraid, like maybe not. Do you think she was afraid of death, Wendi? Or like really just like we have no idea what's on the other side? I mean, I feel like I watched some interviews with her where she talked about that. I just wonder what her experience is on the other side. I feel like she's in some dimension, like a really special dimension, given all the dimensional traveling she seemed to do in her work.
That's a whole nother Zoom conversation with some other folks, because yes, she is in another dimension somewhere. I think there's too much, whatever she was delving in, she's existing somehow in some interesting dimension. And I sound absolutely crazy, I know that, but by saying that, but I do think she was like that. And I don't know that she was afraid of death. I mean, to some degree, part of her died, or part of her changed when she was in Santander in the asylum, because when she comes out, there's like this almost stoicism, there's this reality, like she's not cured, but she's that's when she becomes almost, there's this reason in some parts of her that she understands. And so I don't know that she was afraid of death. I mean, she gave me once the Tibetan Book of the Dead and told me to read it. I don't know what that meant, but you know, so I think she was just really curious and probably believed in other worlds. And so, yeah. Well, I think it's about time that we wrap. Is there anything, any last moments, anything you want to say before we wrap tonight?
You know, Wendi, I'm so grateful that you could be here. This has just been a blast. And thank you, everyone who tuned into this. And I hope you love Leonora and the Morning Light. Here it is, pretty book. I'm so happy with how it came out. But gosh, thank you so much.
It's such a great book, and I can say this, I know it's going to be a tremendous success. You can know all you want to know about art, but it's about this wonderful moment in time and these incredible characters. And I'm like, and you're such a great writer. I'm like so, you know, honored to know you, and thank you for inviting me to be in conversation with you tonight.
Thank you so much.
Wendi, thank you. Michaela, thank you. Happy birthday to Leonora. Happy publishing day to this beautiful book. I love books that make you want to explore and go on adventures even after the book is done. And I can't wait to get my second vaccine shot so I can start going to my local museum. And my awareness of light, natural light, was enhanced while I was reading this gorgeous book. So I just, thank you. I just feel like this was an experience. It wasn't just about reading the book. It was visceral, and it invited me to view the world around me, which has become so mundane, you know, the same four walls for a year of COVID. And I saw it differently because of this book. And it is such a gift. So thank you for writing this. Thank you both for spending this hour with us. Everyone who attended, bless you for your time. Now my least favorite part of hosting events, I get to hit a button and then we're all gone and there's no one to debrief with. So thank you, everyone. Run to your local bookstore and get this book. You will not regret it. Michaela, thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, peace out, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Elise. Thank you, Changing Hands. Bye. Bye. Thank you.